We're here at Last Chance Liquors in Nashville, Tennessee, over on Dickerson Pike. Last Chance Liquors is the oldest operating liquor store in Nashville. It's been open since 1946. This store has a ton of history. Reason for the name is that Last Chance Liquors was the only place in Nashville that you could get liquor before you left town to go to other big cities like Louisville. If you were headed north, this was the last main road before it was all dry counties in between here and the next city. So basically, Last Chance, you'll see that name in other states, some other cities on the borders. Usually that would indicate you were going into a state that might be dry. So those are laws that had stemmed out of Prohibition that hadn't been overturned for decades and decades until after Prohibition was repealed. So this store was kind of in disrepair. A couple years ago, it was bought and fully renovated. Looks a little more modern today, but still with that old charm. The old floors here over over 100 years old, still original floors. This doesn't look like your average liquor store anymore. A lot of stores, these big box stores especially, you see floor stackers and just product everywhere. It's almost hard to walk around. We wanted to keep that kind of neighborhood vibe and keep this store fun and inviting and comfortable, and a place that you might shop, but you also might just hang out at. You used to find a lot of old bottles here at Last Chance before the renovation. I know when I first moved to town, this was one of my favorite liquor stores to come and pick up some of those old bottles that we'd call like Dusties that maybe had sat on the shelf for years, but nobody had bought them or paid attention or gone to a store in a neighborhood that was kind of run down. So, this area has been revived just like a lot of Nashville. So these are some of the things that you could have found in Last Chance Liquors years ago. This is a bottle of George Dickel Tabasco barrel finished. We're actually the last store in Nashville that still has these available for sale. So this was a short-lived collaboration between George Dickel and the Tabasco brand. This one was kind of funky, where they kind of made a whiskey that was meant for a Bloody Mary, which didn't really catch on completely. So this was discontinued almost a decade ago. But this was one of the things that we would have found in Last Chance before the renovation. Also, this other bottle from Cascade Hollow, so another Dickel bottle, but also kind of a short-lived expression. It had a short age statement, but kind of honored the old history of the Cascade Hollow distillery. And similar whiskey bottles have been revived recently with the same brand name. So besides liquor bottles, one of the things that you might find in a liquor store would be some of these old items. So you see some of them on the top of the shelves here. So some of these old boxes, old crates, old bottles, those are kind of pieces of history that might have been in the store for years, and really they become like part of the store, part of the store's identity. So a lot of times, even though you'll see a store with brand new products in it, sometimes you'll see little snippets of old history in the store. This might be one of them right here. This is just a Jack Daniel's box. To the naked eye, it doesn't look a whole lot different, but if you look at a couple of the things on here, you'll notice that this box was bottled this was from 1981. So, this was one of the cases that sat around in the store for years. And what's interesting about this one, it was actually sold here in Nashville, Tennessee by Lippman Brothers, who's the current distributor for Jack Daniel's in Nashville as well. So one of the most historic pieces of Last Chance Liquor is this old sign right here, actually. So this is a hand-painted ancient age bourbon sign. And this was actually on the front facade of the store back in the 1940s and 50s, right after the store was built. So over the years, it had been covered up and nobody knew it was on the front of the store until the renovation, and the sign had kind of been just tossed and thrown into the rubble. We found the sign and saved it, put it in the basement until the store was renovated, and then we decided to hang it here. So it shows a little bit of patina, a little bit of wear. This is kind of like old particle board. It definitely shows its age, but luckily the sign was saved. We hung it back on the wall. There's actually a picture that the Tennessean owns now where if you zoom in, you can see this sign on the front of the building in the 1940s and 50s. So pretty cool piece of history. This is an old bottle of ancient age right here. And this looks, you know, if you see the lettering on the logos, basically the same font, the same logos that you see on that sign. So one of the things I look for when I go into liquor stores are bottles that have great value, that are unique. Sometimes they're unique to the store that you're in. Sometimes they're a special release or limited edition, or just not something you see on the shelf every day. So if I'm looking at this whiskey shelf right here, there's a couple bottles that stand out to me. One is probably this Nashville Barrel Company bottle. So this is a single barrel that was a collaboration between Last Chance Liquors and the Fox Cocktail Bar and Lounge, both in East Nashville. So as well as Nashville Barrel Company, that's 3 companies that are all local that collaborated to make this product. And I know you could go get this whiskey in a drink at the Fox Cocktail Bar, but you can actually come here and buy the full bottle if you want to make that same cocktail at home. So this is the only place to actually buy a full bottle of this because it's a single barrel. So they all go to one store. And then this little collaboration with the Fox Cocktail Bar is really cool because it's kind of an East Nashville collaboration. So that's one of those things. Once those are gone, they're no longer on the shelf. You'll never be able to buy one again. So always a great pick are single barrels that a store does, especially if the store is known for having really great single barrel picks. Looking further, I see this Elijah Craig right here. This is in kind of a fancy box. And if you take a look at it, it says Ryder Cup 2025. So this was a special limited edition, as stated on the box. It's Kentucky straight bourbon, finished with toasted sugar maple and applewood staves. So kind of a unique blend, unique finish that they did with this whiskey. Comes in a nice presentation box, and then it's also got a vintage on it, essentially. It was released for 2025, so these might sit on the shelf through the end of the year, but then they'll be gone. So one of those whiskeys that's definitely collectible. If you're a golf fan, if you're a bourbon fan, if you were born in 2025 and you want to give a bottle to your kid who was born that year, you know, there's a lot of different options for buying a bottle like this, as well as just being, you know, a good bourbon brand on its own. Definitely a bottle that I would look for if I was searching for something kind of unique or allocated. I think going farther down the line, this one stands out to me as well. This is kind of a smaller, you know, mom and pop brand. It's called J. Riggers. They're out of Missouri, out of Kansas City. And fun fact, you know, this whiskey brand actually has a lot of history. They were one of the largest mail order whiskey companies before Prohibition hit. So a lot of people would actually order whiskey through the mail instead of shopping, because sometimes the states that they were in, they weren't allowed to drink. They were dry states where their neighboring state might not be. So this whiskey, if you look at it, it says 2023 edition. So I think that's pretty cool, because that means this whiskey's already sat on the shelf for a couple years, which means it's unlikely that you'll find it in many other stores. It's a limited edition of 2,000 bottles. So that means they only produce 2,000 bottles nationwide or worldwide. So definitely something unique. I've tried a few blends of this from other years and they've been fantastic. Really great whiskey for to pair with a cigar or having a after dinner drink. It has a little bit of sherry in it. So this is a really, really delicious whiskey that you're not going to see too many places, especially in Tennessee.